LIVENODING. In this episode, I will share with you how you can create random abstract blocks, something like this, using geometry nodes. Alright, so the secret is actually, there are many ways to do this, but one way is to use stars that you randomize using noise and random value. Okay, so basically, this is a star. If I skip this set position that randomizing the star, I only get this, right? I can adjust the star shapes. If I set the position, however, with the scale, and if I get rid of the noise, it's just looking a bit random like this. But if I actually use noise as well, so it's gonna be even more random. So just play around with this random value in X and Y. The actual mesh surface itself has this emission material being applied, and I also have subdivision surface over here, so you can have the ink blot that's more roundish or kind of sharp like this. As for the mesh itself, it's actually just this kind of mesh that's looking kind of weird and abstract, but I just flatten it using the shader. So in the end, what you're gonna get is this random abstract shape that you can use as a brush. So I set this to 50 frames and I simply render this out, and it's gonna be kind of like an alpha channel, and we can use this to do some sculpting. Okay, so I'm just gonna wait and render for 50 frames. Actually, this one is using cycles 3.1, but I'm using 10 samples. I could just use it single samples, so it's a little bit faster. But anyway, just wait a few seconds. And the render output's gonna be under temp directory. Just gonna grab 40 of them, I guess that's okay. So this is random stamp. Just gonna put it on the desktop. Okay, we actually have 50. Random stamp. Okay, desktop. Okay, so we have the shapes, and the way I use this, let me show you very quickly. I will be using a donut, for example, and I can use this as a sculpt, okay, or as a stamping for color. So it depends what you want to do. So let's quickly test stamp, sculpting, or color. Let's try with the color first. So this is a donut. I will give it a material. I'm gonna use texture painting, and by default we need to have texture. I will give it base color. So this by default you get this. You can give a different color, but we want to use the alpha texture, so create a new texture. Just open and load our random blocks. Desktop, random stamp, and open the image. So we have this alpha. This is an image sequence because we have multiple image files. I'm just gonna turn on cyclic and auto refresh. So what's gonna happen whenever we change the frame, this guy will change. So let's see if this is already working for us. Okay, by default it is using tile, probably not what we want. However, this plot is already changing over here. Let's take a look. Texture already using this. Tiled, let's switch this to viewing plane, and then as the stroke we can use space, but we can, yeah, it's already kind of working. Let's change the radius. Okay, it's working. There's a bit of fall off. There are two fall off. I will switch this to constant, and also I will switch this one to constant. So it's just gonna create a stamp now. Cool. This is exactly what I'm trying to show you. If we have this frame running while we are doing the brush, I think it will change the stroke. It will change the stamp. Okay, so the only thing that's missing is the color. Yeah, the color. To randomize the color, you might need to use Python. You might be able to use something like SphereChalk, or in the future using geometry nodes in order for you to stamp randomly. So it is quite possible. If you look at the Python console, right click on this and then copy full data path. Check out the just check the color. This is like just RGB. It doesn't have alpha channel. But anyway, you got the idea. So we can change the strength. So now it has some kind of opacity, and then we can let the texture running while we are stamping. So the strength can be set like low opacity. So now it is actually doing this random blot. Currently our stroke is set to space. We can try random and rake, and also a little bit of jitter. That will give like random splat. So yeah, we can, like I said, we can keep this running. So that's our texture stamping, and I think this is quite fun. Really add a lot to your abstract looking art. Yeah, I found this to be quite relaxing, and this is part of the 3D therapy. Let's see, we can do a little bit more. Okay, so we have texture happening, which is fun. However, we can also use sculpting. So let's close this. Sculpting, if only we can sculpt and paint at the same time. So currently we cannot do that. There's a hidden option, so you can enable painting of the vertex. But for now, just to keep it simple, just do the sculpting with the dynamic topology turn on. So dynamic topology turn on, the UV will disappear, our painting will disappear. But we can do some brush sculpting. Okay. Dynamic topology turn on. Let this make this even smaller, like 4, so we can sculpt deeper. It's gonna change the topology. Let's use our texture, which is this guy over here. So by default it's doing this tiling. Not what we want. We want yeah, viewing plane, maybe random. Okay, so it's getting somewhere. So we are using the stamp, and let's turn this on. The stamp will change. Make sure we also adjust this constant fall off and also constant. Yeah, so 2 places to control the fall off, because this one is related to stroke. Okay, I think we're somewhere here. Okay, we can do like stamping. This is doing the random stamping and rotations. We can, I think by default it's using draw. Let's try using clay. Clay is actually really cool, especially when you're using dynamic topology. Let's reload our texture, and we have our clay. Clay again is by default set to tile. Let's set it to viewing plane, rake, and random. You don't need to use random, but maybe that's what you want. Dynamic topology turn on. Okay, you can even go smaller in subdivisions, but maybe keep it, actually keep it 4 for now. What else? Fall off constant, fall off smooth constant. So by doing this, especially when you set it to clay, suddenly your 3D mesh becoming like a kind of more like an actual clay. And remember our random shapes? This shape is changing on every frame. So this is pretty crazy setup. You can use arrow keys left and right just to get the shapes that you want, and then you can continue sculpting. Kind of a quick way to get this kind of random weird, like a, it's looking a little bit like a, maybe like a tumor or something. It's pretty unusual. Remember, the topology of this object will change because we are using dynamic topology. Try using all kind of different brush. So you see, if you can, if you're dragging this, you get something completely unusual, kind of like a, this become like a soil, like ground, and there's just like a creature running underneath. You can really add details this way. Let's turn on the cavity so you can see more detail. Or maybe you don't want that cavity. Just keep sculpting. This is really adding the details that you can bake later. So I have rake turn on. That means when you're doing the stroke, the brush will follow. Just gonna change the brush while sculpting. The cool thing as well, if you want to try, okay, let's see, it's going, when you go back to object mode, it's probably need to calculate the sculpt. I think because I'm using Blender 3.1, it's still alpha, so doesn't like it. Seems to be crashing. But anyhow, you got the idea. Maybe I should just stop here. This might take a lot of memory. So you can create random abstract shape that you can use to do abstract texture painting and also sculpting. Alright, so that's hopefully you'll find this useful. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.